PS2 had an insane amount of anime games. Picture this, it's 2004, you're wearing some overly baggy jeans, you have a chain wallet that's smacking against your leg, you got burned CDs full of Linkin Park, Papa Roach, and Limp Bizkit sitting right next to your PlayStation 2, you got a bottle of Mountain Dew sitting on your desk, and Toonami just finished airing Dragon Ball Z. And somewhere in your room, a PS2 game based off of an anime that you probably never even watched. Back then, anime wasn't everywhere. You couldn't just open up your phone or your computer and have thousands of episodes of anime sitting right there for you. You actually kind of had to hunt for anime back then. And if you liked anime back then, let's be honest, you were probably called weird. Fast forward to today, and anime is super mainstream. But before all that mainstream happened, the PS2 had a crazy amount of anime games within its library. So today, we're diving into the insane amount of anime games that were on the PS2. Let's get into it. We do have to start at Dragon Ball, because Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z weren't just popular, it was everywhere. Dragon Ball Z Budokai came out in 2002, and it was kind of like a playground for fans. The story mode let players relive major points in the anime, secret characters were hidden behind difficult unlock requirements, and players spent countless hours trying to discover everything this game had to offer. Then came Budokai 2 and Budokai 3, and honestly Budokai 3 became kind of legendary. It featured a huge roster, flying combat mechanics, and a Dragon Universe mode that encouraged exploration. Some characters required very specific actions to unlock, which meant schoolyard rumors spread like wildfire. Like, did you hear you had to beat this guy like 3 times to get like Brawly? Did you hear about that? Because like my cousin told me that. You heard that stuff all over the playground back then. But most of the time, it wasn't true. But everybody tried anyway. Then came the Tenkaichi series, which kind of exploded with the rosters. Over 100 characters, massive battles, flying across huge arenas. And for many fans, this was the closest thing they could get to for like controlling an actual episode. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, jeez, that's a mouthful. Dragon Ball Z, but also Tenkaichi 3, Budokai Tenkaichi, wow. But also Tenkaichi. Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is actually considered probably the best Dragon Ball Z game that was ever made. It does catch a decent price. Unless it's on the Wii. I have it on the Wii, and it's not so bad. Then we skip over to the mid-2000s, and the next big anime major leaguer was about to come through. Naruto. The Ultimate Ninja games hit the PS2 and offered something pretty unique. They weren't just giant 3D battlefield. Instead, they looked like almost playable anime episodes. Characters smashed through environments, special attacks filled the screen with flashy animation, and the game packed a ton of fan service. Mini-games, collectibles, alternative costumes, and hidden characters. And even people who weren't a fan of Naruto back then could actually kind of appreciate how much effort was put into these games. Also in the early 2000s, anime was kind of known for like mecha animes. So let's talk about Gundam. If you walked into a game store in the early 2000s and looked in the PS2 section, you more than likely seen a Gundam game. Or 5. Variety here was actually pretty incredible. And I'm gonna butcher some of these names, so bear with me here. We had Mobile Suit Gundam Journey to Jaburo, focused heavily on recreating scenes from the original anime. We had Zeonic Front leaned into strategy. Federation vs. Zeon emphasized on arcade style combat. Then you had Dynasty Warrior style games where you kind of fought through big hordes of enemies. For mech fans, this was paradise. And unlike many anime licenses, Gundam kind of experimented with different genres. I gotta appreciate that. But not every anime got mainstream attention either. Some became kind of cult classics. Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex is a great example. Released in 2004, it's a third-person action shooter. Players could run on walls, climb ceilings, and perform acrobatic moves that felt incredibly futuristic. Then there was Samurai Champloo, one of the coolest anime series in the era, might I add. It's a PS2 game blended stylish sword combat with a show's unique vibe. And these weren't giant blockbuster hits, but it did show the variety of what anime games had to offer. And let's not forget, RPG fans were eating pretty good. Anime-inspired RPGs thrived on the PS2. The Dot Hack series is probably the most famous for this. What made Dot Hack so unique was that it simulated an online MMORPG years before online gaming became common for console players. The games felt like you were logging into another world. Fake emails, fake forums, news updates, characters messaging you. It was incredibly immersive. The series even connected directly to anime releases, creating a multimedia experience that felt years ahead of its time. They released the Dot Hack game and anime pretty close between each other, like really close. They knew what they were doing. Now this next series, I'm not a big fan of, but I thought I'd at least mention it because I gotta at least show it some respect. Fullmetal Alchemist. Instead of simply retelling anime episodes, some included original storylines. Players use alchemy during combat, creating attacks and objects directly from the environment. For fans of the show, these games offered entirely new adventures featuring familiar characters. That's something anime games don't always do today. Many modern releases stick closely to retell the anime, but back then, developers seemed a little bit more willing to experiment a little bit. And then we talk about One Piece. Before it took over the world. It's kind of funny looking back at it because One Piece is like one of the largest franchises on Earth right now. But during the PS2 era, the anime didn't really explode so much on the Western side. Several One Piece games released in Japan, some eventually reached our Western audiences. Many featured action combat, exploration, and huge cast of characters. Looking back at it, fascinating seeing how early these games arrived compared to the franchise's modern popularity. So we did cover some fighting games at the beginning of this video, but let's cover a little bit more. Anime fighting games became kind of like a battleground on the PS2 generation. Everybody wanted their Budokai killer. You got Yu Yu Hakusho, Bleach, and Inuyasha. Everybody kind of got a fighter. Developers constantly added flashy super moves, giant transformations, and anime accurate attacks. The goal wasn't balance, it was making it super powerful. And honestly, the approach kind of worked because Yu Yu Hakusho Dark Tournament, probably the best anime arc ever created. Pretty good game too, not gonna lie. If you haven't played on PS2, you should. But one of the crazy things about PS2 games is how many never left Japan. Hundreds, seriously, hundreds of games never left there. Entire franchises received multiple PS2 releases that Western audiences never officially experienced. Back then, import gaming felt almost mythical. You see some screenshots in a magazine, watch some grainy video on some DSL internet connection, and you would dream about playing them someday. Today, emulation and fan translations have made many of these games accessible, but back then they felt kind of like hidden treasures. But the question is, why did the PS2 get so many anime games? And the answer's pretty simple. The PS2 sold over 160 million units, and anime was growing rapidly. Development costs were lower, and publishers could take risks. A niche anime game didn't need to sell millions, it just needed to find its audience. The freedom led to experimentation, and experimentation led to variety. That's why the PS2 library feels so special. Back in the early 2000s, liking anime would make you kind of stand out. But now it's completely normal. Anime is everywhere. They sell shirts in big major stores, and Major League Sports team people like it, and it's literally everywhere. The culture has completely changed, and that's pretty cool. But there was something special about liking anime in the early era. Kind of made me feel like liking anime was like a secret club or something. But the PS2 wasn't just a great console for anime games, it was the console for anime games. From Dragon Ball to Naruto, to Gundam to Dot Hack. From major blockbusters to bizarre games. No other system has ever had quite the same combination of quantity and variety. And every time I look at a PS2 shelf packed with anime games, I'm reminded of the weird but exciting period when anime was just starting to explode in popularity. So let me know down below, what is your favorite anime PS2 game? And what anime game do you think deserves more attention? I'm Cameron, this is Retro Carnage, peace.